Alright, hold on a second here. Let's see. Alright, let's see. Check, 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 check. Audio check. Alright, hang on. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Hello, YouTubers, diecast collectors. It is me, the J-Man63. Do me a favor before I make this video, make sure you like, make sure you comment down below, make sure you smash that button, and as usual, enjoy the video. So, this is my whole thing about electric cars versus what I'm interested in. What is striking me as interesting about these new electric cars that I think is definitely different. Don't get me wrong, I do like the push toward all this, why I kind of think it could be a good thing, why it's a paradox, things like that. But do let me know what you would like to see next in another future video. If I can pertain to this subject more, touch on this more, let me know what content you would like to see next me cover. So I'm going to get into it. Now, electric cars are very interesting animals in my opinion. Yes, in my opinion, I do like internal combustion. Don't get me wrong. Everything in my collection does center around the ICB. However, we do have to remember now that the Tesla Model Plaid is not only now one of the fastest stock cars that you can buy, not necessarily electric car being stock, but we have to remember that the Plaid is now one of the fastest cars out there on the market as we speak. And this is an economy. This is supposed to be a sedan. This car is very quick. It does 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds, pretty much, which is absolutely astounding. This car can actually cover a quarter mile in like less than 12 seconds. There is literally nothing out there that can beat this car. I believe so. Let me check my statistics here and just make sure I'm not just pulling this out of my rear end. So let me Google this. Let me Let me do my screen share here. Model S. I would do a Model S. Let's see, the Model S Plaid here, and we are looking at the absolute statistics, 0 to 60. We have our statistics. This car retails around 131,000. You have to remember, some gas cars, yes, they sometimes do cost that much, but for 131,000, this is still definitely out of the reach of the average Joe. Now, yes, this car does cost a lot in my opinion, but you consider the warranty is about 4 years or 50,000 miles. That's not too bad of a warranty. But we're looking at what these are like, and these are quick cars. Do not get me wrong, but I'm more interested in the rest of the statistics. When you factor in that this car actually has beaten a BMW M3, which is the fastest BMW they have now, and then you factor in the fact that this car is a sedan. This car does 200 miles an hour. I have just looked up the stat. This car goes 200 miles an hour. That's in a sedan. That is quick. And in my opinion, cars like this, and then we can go even further by looking up the new Chinese supercar that is now even quicker, which is a Formula E winning team. If we look up a car called the Rimac, the Nevera, this is a car here that is now the fastest electric supercar, which is basically faster than all of now the world's fastest hypercars. You have to consider that the Koenigsegg 1.1, we have to look at the stats here and compare them to now what was the fastest supercar at the time, which was the Koenigsegg 1:1, which had 1 metric horsepower per 1 kilogram. Interestingly enough, this car weighs 4,750 pounds. This car has an output of around 2,000 horsepower. That's almost a power to rate ratio. You have 2,000 horsepower to nearly 4,000 pounds. That car does weigh a good amount, but there's more than half the power in the weight of this car. And then if we also look at the kilograms this car weighs, which is going to be even less, this car probably produces now, we're looking at this as the fastest accelerating now, and you look at this in the blink of an eye, it'll set a quarter mile and a world record of 8.52 seconds. You have a top speed of 167 miles an hour that you have reached in the quarter mile, which is absolutely astounding to think that a car can do this. In my opinion, am I ready for them to completely bring all this onto the market? Yeah, yes and no. My opinion is this also may strengthen the power grid if we can get, a better power grid, in my opinion. Maybe they will strengthen the grid a little bit, but unfortunately right now as it stands, the grid is kind of antiquated to things. And in my opinion, with the grid kind of being antiquated, I am not really certain if I necessarily think about electrification as completely viable right now. But I think more development should somewhat be made, in my opinion. Am I completely against the electrification thing? No, not at all. I definitely think it's interesting, but like I said, a lot of the internal combustion stuff. Now, again, we can look at all the statistics and stuff here, but it says here now in this article as it reads, the 2022 Nevera, an electric hypercar designed to be quick. Tiny Croatian. I thought it was Chinese. Okay, I stand corrected. I stand corrected here. Sorry. Ooh, stumbling over my words here. So yeah, automaker. So what do you guys think? Give me your opinions when I kind of keep going on this here, because listen to this. This car has a top speed of 258 miles an hour. 258 miles an hour. That, let's just say, that may not be as quick as the 1-to-1. And it says, why shouldn't our first test drive of the Rimac be equally quick? Automaker is in Los Angeles to show prospective buyers. Interestingly enough, pre-production Nevera and its lower in-between clients. Toss the keys to its $2.4 million baby. Only instructions, be quick. This car is due back in an hour. First set sights on the Regera, sitting in a lot. Interesting, interesting, interesting. Awesome to see. And in my opinion, when these things get faster, hello, the brakes. In my opinion, this is what's going to need. This is what strikes me. Because the brakes we have now are definitely going to need to evolve, in my opinion. Because right now, you think about the most advanced brakes we have now are the carbon ceramic ones. But you gotta remember, sometimes ceramic in anything will build up heat. So then where does that leave, the brakes if those are, not good? That's not necessarily a safe thing. Still, it's pretty crazy just to see cars like this. And then when we go back, we looked at this car and we're seeing that this was pretty much as fast as the current Chiron. Now you remember that this car costs $2,400,000. At a front and rear motors, you got all-wheel drive, and of course it's a and you have a front AC permanent magnetic electric combo. Interesting. So that's kind of cool. So it's different, definitely. AC and DC, time to see what that can do, It's pretty crazy, though, to think about this. And then we look up which was the we look up the 1-to-1 here, which is which was at the time the fastest. Now, we have to remember that cars like this that are actually consume gas, and we don't know if Koenigsegg is actually, it's going to be interesting to see if Koenigsegg will since they've already become that push for more environmentally friendly. How amazing would that be to see a Koenigsegg with electric stuff? And I haven't actually seen anything what Christian von Koenigsegg is actually planning to do, considering that now we're kind of at the crux of pretty much engine power. It says 0 to 100 in 2.8 seconds, 0 to 62 in 2.8. And they say the theoretical, speed is 273, the Regera, obviously. And then we look up the new one, which is the Jesco. So yes, sir, currently the fastest gas supercar is, in fact, quicker. We're looking at the Jesco now, which is an interesting model I've actually been wanting to check out. So it says here that it's an Apex Koenigsegg, while some reports the Jesco would be capable of 530, which is something interesting. It said it's ready to hit the road at over 500 kilometers an hour. Interesting here. So, interestingly enough, the Jesco is probably, in my opinion, it said 2019 reveal. We had the Geneva Motor Show. Said the Swedish Supercar company is set for a 2022 debut. They're going to produce 125 of the Jesco absolute units. Says it will be a track-only version of the car named for Jesco von Koenigsegg, the father of company founder and CEO. And the fastest car in the Swedish brand will ever make, the Jesco takes over from the big-hitting Regera. 2017, that set a production record of 447, was only recently beaten by the SSC Tuatara. So I'm curious, actually, because I don't know the metric system very well. So let's see. KMH to MPH. Let me see this here. Considering that, let's see, this car, we have to go back to our page here and see this because I'm actually very interested. So we enter 447 kilometers an hour, and I'm not kind of like just going off on a tangent here, and I'm trying to figure this out while I'm talking to you guys. So 447. We have to consider that the Rimac Nevera is already topping out at about 260. However, the 0 to 60 time being much faster, we factor in the Nevera is probably quicker in the corners and faster to accelerate. That probably means yes in a flat out, maybe. But I would absolutely love to see a test of how much the Nevera can put up a fight against the current fastest supercars. So we look up these stats of 447 miles an hour with the car going that speed, and interestingly enough, the Rimac Nevera going 258, that's only 15 or 16 miles an hour off of the current production gas record. So you remember, considering all this, I would be interested to know if the speedy Swedish will catch up with all this stuff going on, and it's going to be very interesting to see if the Swedes can actually adapt, and it's going to be kind of interesting now. Now we've had the horsepower wars going on for so long now, and it's been absolutely insane in my opinion. But now in my book, it's like, what do we have? We have this tier, we've had that tier, we've had this tier, that tier. Forever it's been like that. And it's definitely been that established power for dominance. But in my opinion, Koenigsegg, if you've looked up any history about this company, they are not necessarily a huge company. Koenigsegg is a very small, very, what's the word? They're a very small company. And in my opinion, Koenigsegg may or may not be able to keep up. We'll see what happens. But we look up the other Koenigsegg's. They have a 4-door one now. Let's see if Koenigsegg has an answer. Let's see if Koenigsegg has. Let's see if Koenigsegg has actually made an electric car. Yes, they actually have indeed. There is a car called the Regera. And this car actually combines a powerful twin turbo and a V8, and this actually has 3 electric engines. So then let's see the Regera, because now obviously Koenigsegg is, and I probably should have known this, but they are experimenting with electrification, so that's pretty obvious. And the Regera is 249 miles an hour. Yeah, that is off the 1-to-1, but we have to remember that some of these cars are only theoretically proven. And here we go. Can any car do 300 miles an hour? Which is the biggest curiosity that I have. And it says here the Chiron Sport 300 actually did become the first production car to drive 300 miles an hour. And it's just 15 years after the Veyron, first to reach was 250. But you got to remember, the Chiron does weigh a good bit. And if we look up the weight of the Chiron, which we're actually looking at here, we look up how much the Chiron weighs. Now let's see, this car weighs 4,000 pounds, roughly. So then that's obviously the output. So interestingly enough, the Regera, yes, it does weigh about the same, but the Regera, we have to remember, is an all-out race car. Now, in my opinion, a few things are going to happen when cars start getting more advanced like this, and we already have more advances. Lambo is even... My thing is, Koenigsegg is still kind of a little bit of a step behind, because even now the supercar companies are actually literally, we saw all this. We saw this with cars like, let's see, we saw this with the McLaren P1. We saw this with cars like the LaFerrari. We saw this with everything going on. We did see all of this happen. We saw a lot of these vehicles, starting, when the whole thing with the Prius, it's a hybrid and stuff. We've already seen that we've had some experimentation with the stuff, which is very interesting. It's always neat to see, in my opinion, I'm a very technological person. I look at things from that standpoint. I definitely find it interesting to see what is actually going to happen here. So to get off supercars here for a minute and to go on, what I think is interesting, I still think that gas may get shut off in 2030. That might actually be a thing. And unfortunately, in my opinion, when the gas starts finally going out, the dead lizards and stuff, I have no idea now, because now we've considered all these old cars and stuff from the 60s, the 70s now, which it's not necessarily good to see all this going on, because I'm not a fan, because I look at some of these cars from my car show and I kind of think, man, it's a shame to think in, less than a few years we're just going to see, all this stuff go away. Hopefully it's not the case, and, hopefully we can find alternatives to kind of keep the stuff going still. But cars that are old from the 60s and 70s, it's going to be, it's almost a shame. Like I said, some of these really high-end cars, like, you wouldn't put electric motors in a Ferrari Lusso, which is one of the cars I'm looking at, or you wouldn't take a Can-Am car and put electric motors. And the sad thing about that, in my opinion, is cars like this, in my book, that are older, had a soul. Vehicles like this had a sound. Stuff like this, we've cherished a lot of this stuff. We go to these auto shows and things, and we see all this stuff going on, and maybe it's going to mean a new direction in the industry. Maybe it's going to mean a new direction, but you got to remember all the SEMA show cars now, and we look up all these SEMA show cars. We look up the highest horsepower. Let's see. Highest. Let's look up the highest horsepower SEMA car. Let's see, highest horsepower SEMA cars. It says here, Chevrolet is revealed. I want to see this. Yeah, some of these SEMA cars have an insane amount of horsepower, but cars like this that have 2,000 horsepower, which is crazy, and you look at some of the different cars that had, let's see, high horsepower. I'll get on a subject matter because I do remember high horsepower SEMA car. Let's see. High horsepower SEMA 2014. Insane SEMA gallery. Let's see what we got here. I'm actually really curious because we're kind of going on deck here. We're looking at Hot Rod Mag. It says here the SEMA shows and a hot rodding. Of course, we all know that. And it says, let's face it, the engine is the heart of any hot rod, street rod, drag car. I'm not going to go over this. The SEMA manufacturers show that the hottest and newest stuff. For the assignment, we ventured out to find the coolest engines stuffed in to a vast array of cars, trucks, bikes. Thankfully, more than 1,000, obviously. So you got to remember, I just came from a car show. Yeah, 1,000 is definitely a ton, and I just went to a show with 400 vehicles, which still that was a decent amount. Don't get me wrong, this show I went to on the East Coast was no slouch by any means. It says here we have a 1950s iron Copo. The E-Copo has 100% electric power, which that's now pretty much been the big deal. So, and it's clear that builders from all over the globe, they bring the A game to SEMA, obviously, which is normally the thing with that. And it says we encountered everything from modified to stockers to the most extreme engineering, which is always interesting to note. Set high on the cool factor list. There was no shortage of big blocks, small blocks, and obviously a lot of other stuff. And you kick back and take a look at the 100 hot engines, greatest automotive shows on earth. Then the article here, modern crate engines have made it easy to power just about any car or truck. And there's really nothing else here, but they show the Buick motor and a VW bug. I'm just kind of looking at general like stuff here. But, you know, SEMA cars do have a lot of power, don't get me wrong. You know, 2,000, 3,000 horsepower. But like I said, even with motors, still, we are definitely in the midst of where the crux, where you can still pack a ton of superchargers on. Yes, you can do that, a lot of that. But what we're remembering now is kind of like I said, the old stuff of the past, you know, things like that that definitely had more of a soul. This is kind of that chapter of that bit, you know, in my opinion. Do I think all the electrification stuff is great? Not exactly. Yes, it is good in the books that we are going to get way faster, way, way, way faster. In my opinion, what point are we at needing to wear a spacesuit with these things, or a G-suit or something? It's going to be insane in my book. So, what do I think about this? It's interesting to note that definitely the electric car has come such a long way, but at the same time, is it gone too far? Do we think if it's gone this far now, that we're going to go even further? Probably. With electrification now becoming the forefront, it will definitely be interesting. I mean, not necessarily the Ferraris, which unfortunately, in my opinion, all these cars like the Cobra, cars that I find, you know, absolutely stunning, all these motorcycles and stuff that were definite show winners, things that are now, which is very interesting, you know, stuff like that, which I find, you know, stuff like the Orange County bikes, things like that, which I find, you know, an interest in. I'm not necessarily sure if that's going to be on the same playing field, but then again, in my opinion, technology changes, things change. I'm not really sure. I don't stick my nose up at this necessarily, but I have a slight opinion. I'm not for it. I'm not against it. I kind of just sit on the middle. You know, I'm not necessarily going to say that Tesla's bad. I'm not going to say that GM going the electric route is bad. Do you think we'll see? Do we think we'll see more SEMA cars like this? Possibly. We've already seen the E-Copo. We've already seen the horsepower wars at the SEMA show. Yeah, there were 1,000 vehicles and probably around 1,300, which is an insane number, which is crazy. But yeah, again, you got to remember the one I came from probably had 300 or 400, which wasn't too bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing apples to oranges here, but I'm just saying. But that's not necessarily a argument about car shows to be made. But I will say, being as I came from the biggest one, pretty much one of the largest year enders on the East Coast, the Coastal Edge one, which was pretty amazing. Like I said, and to see cars like this, to probably have seen them, probably, um, like I said, that's an opinion why I want to keep going to these auto shows before, this stuff is not a thing anymore, before hopefully not where everyone's just bringing electric cars, and I don't know. I don't necessarily think it's going to be great when the gas is gone. That's going to suck because now, it stinks. I really hope that we can still keep internal combustion alive. I hope we can. But then again, with electric cars getting so fast, therein lies that double-edged sword. But in my opinion, now that I'm talking about just the cars in general, I want to talk about a few things, like the pipelines, things like that, getting shut down. That's insane. We think about what's going to have to keep up with that demand. Electric cars, there is a demand. Don't get me wrong. Yes, fossil fuels are probably going out. Yes, it's probably a chore to mine them. Yes, I agree that oil mining sometimes is not always the best. But in my opinion now, I'm just thinking that it's still going to create a drain on some resources. You have metals that go into computers and stuff, and I hope that with all the mining that's going to take place with all this, and there's people who don't like the mining aspect of things, but I'm not really sure because they're now going to be a war for all this stuff, which I hope doesn't happen. But it's interesting to note that, all this mining is going to have to take place, and it'll be interesting to see how those techniques will evolve too, because, the mining equipment we have now, hasn't necessarily, what's the word, been electrified. So then again, it's not just horsepower wars at this point, it's the war to kind of get everything going up again, because technically now, I'm curious if we're talking about electric power, now we can look up electric mining equipment, and actually, I want to see if any of that exists. Let's see, mining. Electric mining truck. I'm curious if they have the world's largest EV. I'm curious. Are mining dump trucks electric? I was curious to see this because are big mining trucks electric? We're going to look here. It says here they are. Interesting. They're working together to create the world's largest electric vehicle. They got a hydrogen-powered mining truck. Now, I'm not a big construction equipment person, but it's definitely kind of interesting because now I'm wondering, they're saying, now in my opinion, they are saying gas is going to be going out of style, but what, in my opinion, is another resource that we're not considering? Gas, certainly, yes, that's kind of going, to be out. But what's to say about diesel here? Diesel is the big thing. Diesel, not really certain on the process of getting diesel. I'm not necessarily certain about that. But we definitely still use diesel power. Don't get me wrong, it's definitely still a thing. And I do like my diesel trucks as much as the next person. It's nice to still see a semi here and the semi is rolling down the road and stuff. But it's interesting to note what's the involvement of diesel power. We have so much now with diesel engines, which is a side I haven't even touched on. So much of that has happened, and that's pretty crazy, which we might actually see that happen more, which we've seen the diesel power stuff evolve immensely, But my question is, how many fuels will actually be left once all this is dried up? how will they be powering this stuff? How will the alternatives work? And how are we going to keep some of the older machinery, like the old Le Mans cars and stuff like that, running? Yes, it is going to be dated, but in my opinion, are these cars just going to be sitting there and not actually running, being a climate controlled vault and stuff? And in my opinion, what's this going to mean for, model collectors, people like us who are kind of like the low end of things, what's kind of to happen for people who are like us who are still kind of stuck in the 70s, 60s, 50s, even the 40s sometimes. There's some people that like the brass era stuff. It's interesting to note that, what is going to happen, because yes, I do like this kind of stuff I collect, but what's to say that stuff that we collect, once the metals are getting used up, things like that, it might actually cause our hobby to suffer. And there's zinc, aluminum, magnesium, calcium, the stuff that they make these out of. It'd be interesting to see how that actually evolves, because this is the reason that I'm probably one of the people that still collects this stuff, because all this stuff I have, I want to kind of have it pass on, and kind of have this as, a dedication to still keep, at least some of this alive, because now, like I said, in my opinion, electric cars, yeah, they are an interesting subject matter, but I don't know, it's hard to say if I'm all for it or if I'm all against it. I'm not really sure, but like I said, the drain of stuff, it's just going to put a drain on everything, in my opinion, and I'm not necessarily sure if people are exactly ready to go. Or, we have all our older people that love hot rods. I'm sure this channel has quite a bit of those, don't get me wrong. But it's definitely interesting to note all of this stuff. And it looks like we already have 3 playbacks. Thank you, everybody. And we have 6, I can't really see the viewers. It looks like we have concurrent views, which is at 0. And I'm looking at the watch time, and we have 3 playbacks. Okie doke. So, it's interesting to note that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure where I stand. I'm kind of lost for words here. I'm tripping over things, but it's definitely interesting to note all this for sure. I'm gonna kind of let's see. Can I? Yeah. Sorry, I was just trying to adjust my thing here. So obviously you can do a display capture. I was just checking on something. Alright guys, well, and in my opinion, like I said, it's definitely interesting to note that, like I said, all this is going to be going on. I'm sorry about that. I'm kind of out of frame here. Hold on a sec. Sorry, I'm just adjusting it. Yeah, there we go. That's better. Okay, so sorry, it's gonna have some of this cut out a little bit. Okay, so anyway, like I said, it's interesting to note that, like I said, all this is going on for sure. I mean, I'm not really big on it. I'm not against it, like I said, but for sure it's interesting to note all this. So that's just my thoughts. I want to know what your guys' thoughts are in the comments. I want to kind of gauge your opinions about the electrification thing. I want to kind of break down why, and then I'll look up more of this stuff later, and then maybe I'll get back and maybe make a follow-up video and let me know what you guys would like to see put into this thing, because like I said, we probably have about 10 more years. In my opinion, if it's going to actually happen, we had better honestly enjoy the auto shows while they last. I mean, I'm trying to myself, and I'm definitely hoping that we still have, some of this stuff to go enjoy, and in my opinion, it's kind of interesting, but I really hope that we can still enjoy some of this stuff. The future definitely looks uncertain for gas, in my opinion, in my book, and it's interesting. I mean, I definitely would like to gauge opinions here, so tell me your thoughts, please. I would definitely like to hear them for sure. So yeah. Sorry guys, it's been a really long day. I'm exhausted, and I will definitely catch you guys on the next one. I am the J-Man63, and I will see you guys later. Alright, and like I said, let me know what you want to see. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, and make sure you hit subscribe. Anyways guys, for more opinions and stuff, just hit me up, the J-Man63.